McLaughlin, Police Commission.
I see Cheryl.
Hear you.
Sorry, Cheryl Jones, Human Resources.
Chief.
Leon Krolikowski, Chief of Police.
Dave Rivera, police officer.
Anthony Bento, I represent the New Canaan Police Union, and also David Rivera.
My name is Chris Hodgson. I'm from Birchman Moses. We represent the town of New Canaan.
I'm Charles Sherwood. I'm with the South Central Chiefs of Police Association.
I'm Bruce Davey, test consultant to Dr. Sherwood.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Must have gone mute. One moment.
No, Bruce, you're good. Bruce, you're good. Nope, you just muted yourself, Bruce.
I'm back.
Todd Hudson,
Yes, just an interested party.
from where?
New Canaan, Connecticut.
Okay, good. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Michael Dinan, I see you're on as well.
Yeah, I'm the shortstop for the New York Yankees.
That guy. All right. Thanks, thanks, Michael. All right, so let's open up meeting. This meeting was called by Officer Rivera. It's in regards to his appeal under the general order of number 88-2-46 in Roman numeral 3 in the appeal section of the general orders. We can either have this as an open meeting or an executive session. And David, I'll let you make that call.
Open meeting is fine. I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Do I have to, probably the mic on this thing. I'll pull it a little closer. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. See, we're trying to get the three of us in, but yet it has to be back far enough, but yet the mic on the laptop is only so good. So bear with it. We'll figure this out. Thanks. So David, what we want to do is give you the opportunity for the union to present any information regarding this appeal. So David, I'll open it up to you or to Anthony.
So thank you. It would be our preference to somewhat handle this informally based on the circumstances, how we are all meeting via Zoom. I first would like to thank everyone for meeting tonight on this important issue and also making Officer Rivera apprised of his right to have this meeting under FOI, either under public section or under executive session. So as we did speak before, he would like it in public. So thank you for that again. So we're here to discuss the sergeant's test that took place on August 27th. And obviously you all know that based on our attendance here today is that Officer Rivera is appealing the procedure in which that's done. And to boil it down to its essence, Officer Rivera feels that the testing procedure was defective, and we're going to walk you through on points and on how we believe the test was potentially defective. First, as I first stated, that the position that was being tested for was sergeant, and Officer Rivera doesn't believe that the testing necessarily gauged the actual sergeant position. The general orders are pretty clear that, and the testing procedure is clear, that the job description should be reviewed to make sure that it's up to date. In the New Canaan Police Department, it's our belief that the sergeant job description hasn't been updated in the last 8 years. It's our opinion that the job has evolved quite significantly since the last job description, and we don't believe that the job description accurately reflects what a sergeant position is today in New Canaan. For instance, just by point of example, one of the duties within that job description says that an individual as a sergeant should become familiar with computers. And I think we would all acknowledge today that officers, even patrol persons, are completely dependent on computers, whether they be in their patrol cars. And as a sergeant, their work is probably exclusively done on computers. And again, the job description just intimates that an individual would need a basic understanding. So that's just one example where we think the job description is somewhat stale. And it's important that the job description is accurate because that's where we believe that the test really started. The other issue related to the job itself is there has to be a job analysis that meshes with the actual test. And we don't believe that the job was ever analyzed through the town or certified prior to the testing being done. Now, those are related to the test matching the position that was being sought after. Those are our objections to that piece of it. On the test itself, there was a discussion afterwards. Now, please keep in mind, the town, I'm going to use the word subcontracts this testing out. It has a third-party vendor conduct the test. This was a new, this was a different company, I should say, that the town has used in the past. Mr. Officer Rivera has taken other promotional exams, as have our other officers, and they found that this particular testing procedure, the questions were confusing, and the discussion after the test was that there was potentially more than one right answer for a lot of tests. Now, please keep in mind, the test is multiple choice, and it wasn't structured in the sense that it would say something to the effect of, please choose the best answer. It would just have answers, and a lot of times it was the belief that there could be multiple answers that could be correct. So we would put that piece of the testing as that it was just overall confusing, whether it was the directions or the answers, and sometimes there could have been more than one answers. There was also a belief that clearly the individuals are given study guides, things to study for the sergeant position. There were some things that the feeling was it went beyond the scope of what a sergeant would do, that potentially this test, maybe some pieces were taken from lieutenant's exams, captain's exams, but there are things that were outside of the scope of what we would believe would be a sergeant, that there were pieces that weren't relevant to what individuals were studying. So at the end of the testing procedure, and I think my brother, Attorney Hodgson, is going to bring this up, is that individuals were given the opportunity to, after handing in their answer sheet, to give their opinion on the test itself. And some individuals were required to hand in those papers rather quickly. There wasn't a time to fill those out in completely. That was somewhat a rushed process, because individuals did express to the union that they did want to intimate that there were some portions of the test that they did feel that were potentially confusing. And I think the proof is also in the pudding. We've had sergeant's tests conducted before, again, by another vendor. And with this particular test, everyone's scores went down significantly. Like there was a reduction in everyone's comprehension or the test itself. And again, although this wasn't part of the testing process, there was an opportunity either the day after the test or a couple days after. David could correct me, I might be wrong on this, when there was shooting training, and the candidates had an opportunity to talk to Captain Walsh, and they were all expressing that they thought that this test was confusing or difficult or potentially defective. And so now those are all issues that led to either the test being created, the taking of the test. Then we also had another objection post-test. Obviously, within the general orders, the individuals have the right to see their answers. And again, I told this to all my members, testing and interviewing is a skill, and it's good to do it and to get better at it, to burnish your skills. And when Officer Rivera wanted to see where he potentially went wrong, again, only because it's a multiple choice test, he had no context to be able to gauge his wrong answers or no ability to challenge whether the test was correct, because all he would see is, for instance, question 6, the correct answer was A and he put B. If I firmly believe that a test should also be used for purposes of increasing an officer's ability, and that didn't provide the opportunity to do it because it gives him no context to see where he potentially did go wrong, if he went wrong at all, or the ability to challenge those results. So that's a quick overview of where our beliefs that the test was defective or problematic. David, if I left anything out, please feel free to fill in.
Sure. There, along with my issues with the test personally, there are multiple general order violations that I have found in regards to the process of the test and how it should have been conducted. And Anthony, if I'm going too far, you let me know. But in regards to general orders under the Equal Employment Opportunity General Order. This is going to be under the procedures section of testing and selection. It clearly states that, and I may be, reiterating what Anthony said, but prior to the posting of job announcements, ensuring that job descriptions conform to actual job functions and necessary minimum qualifications. I think it's apparent that the job description not being up to date violated that general order. The next general order violation that I was able to find is under testing and selection. It's going to be under procedures for professional requirements. The selection process will make every effort to ensure that testing components have been documented as having validity, utility, and a minimum adverse impact. It's my opinion that that the town not having the ability to review the actual written questions of the exam doesn't allow for the town to ensure that validity, utility, and a minimum adverse impact was conducted. In the same section, it says that written tests, if any which are used as part of the testing process, should be documented as having validity, utility, and adverse minimum impact. And this criteria will be applicable for both commercially developed and state administered tests. Once again, the town does not have the test. So the town cannot validate whether or not any of those things have occurred. Section J, any test or examination, all elements conducted by or for the department by an outside or private organization should meet the professional and legal requirements of validity, utility, and minimum adverse impact. Once again, not having that does not allow the town the ability to do those things. And then the last general order violation that I've been able to find that I think was violated was under the promotion section under record security. All records or promotional examination results and any promotional materials, for example, written examinations or oral board questions, this is the important word, shall be secured in the office of the chief of police. So based upon the general orders and my interpretation of the general orders, it's my belief that all personnel should be allowed to review the written tests because it clearly states it in our general orders. There's nothing in our general orders that says that we should not be able to review the written exam. In fact, it actually says the opposite.
Anthony, anything else?
I don't think so at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yeah? No? Okay. Chris, why don't we hear from you?
I can't really hear you, but
Can we hear from Chris from the town's point of view here? And then probably from Leon next.
yeah, just Tony, I'm not sure that we discussed this, but my role tonight would be to advise the commission regarding procedure and help them weigh the evidence. So I'm not going to be presenting any information for the commission regarding these tests. The Chief Krolikowski is going to do an introduction about this issue, and then going to ask Dr. Sherwood and Mr. Davey to speak to the test. I would just note that the issue of whether they can see the test questions it is confidential under Connecticut law, to my understanding. And it's not really the appeal is under the general order is there a basis to set aside this test? So that's really what the commission is looking at tonight. So with that said, I'll turn it over to the chief.
Very good. All right, Chief Krolikowski.
Sure. So I'll just give a brief overview of my experience with promotional testing. My experience is that there's only really two known testing companies and vendors in Connecticut. Mr. Sherwood and Mr. Davey are two of them. And in fact, more than a decade ago, we used Mr. Davey for many years exclusively for our promotional testing. Subsequently, I believe he semi-retired. Then we had to find a different vendor, and we used that vendor for more than 5 or 6 years. And subsequently, we used Mr. Sherwood and Mr. Davey for this most recent test. And earlier this year, used them for a lieutenant's test, and which was run very well, and everybody was happy with that test. So when we needed to run this sergeant's test because the list was expiring, we engaged Mr. Sherwood and Mr. Davey for the written portion. And that's kind of a summary of how the testing goes. And from my experience of more than 14 years as a captain and as a chief, we have never seen test questions, nor would we want them in our possession. All you have to look at is what happened in Bridgeport, and to know that that's not a good practice. It's a genuinely bad idea. And so we do not possess those, never have in more than 14 years of my experience.
Okay. Any questions for Chief? Yeah? No? Okay. Dr. Sherwood, would you address these questions then for us on the test and where you test and how many tests a year do you give, and just give us your background as well, please.
Sure. Thank you very much. So my name is Charles Sherwood, with the South Central Chiefs of Police Association and the co-organization, if you will, which is South Central Criminal Justice here in New Haven. The test in New Canaan, both the lieutenant and the sergeant's exam, was done under the auspices of the South Central Chiefs of Police Association. The office provides a full range of management services to all of the departments in the greater New Haven area. That is 21 departments. There are 19 municipal and 2 university departments. We've been doing testing, both entry and promotional exams, for in excess of 30 years. We generally do the testing for most of the departments in the greater New Haven area, and on occasion and on request, we will consider doing testing for outside of the greater New Haven area. which is exactly how it came to pass that we did the exams for New Canaan. We have worked with Bruce Davey Associates on a number of exams over the last several years, all of which had good outcomes, both in region and outside of region. So we have had some experience with them. And again, we used him as the test consultant for the written exam for the both New Canaan Lieutenant and New Canaan Sergeant. This process began on June 23. Chief Kolakowski sent a letter to our organization asking us to do the sergeant's exam. Again, we had done the lieutenant's exam earlier this year. He also indicated in that letter that he would like Captain Andrew Walsh to be the liaison, which is the person that we dealt with throughout the process leading up to the written exam. We sent there were a series of email communications, June 24, 25, 26, to Bruce Davey, asking him if he was free and would be willing to assist with this exam as well. And he did indicate that he would. At that point in time, I sent a letter dated June 30 to Captain Walsh, and I stated that we would be able to assist with the sergeant's exam. I did provide him with a copy of or a job analysis that we've developed for the sergeant's position, and with other materials as well, just to get the process started. Also on June 30th, Captain Walsh forwarded 15 general orders with policies and so forth that he wanted to be included in the test, and that I forwarded to Bruce Davey for his review and consideration. During the course of the month of July, Captain Walsh forwarded the results of the job analysis. The job analysis was, we asked the sergeants and lieutenants to fill that out for the position of sergeant. He covered a number of areas, and he sent me back those results. There were also a series of telephone conversations and other communications between myself and the captain regarding scheduling and test logistics and the health precautions to be used at the site and all of those types of things. It was during those conversations that Captain Walsh advised me that there would be 5 candidates for the written examination. I again forwarded that information to Bruce Davey, so he was aware of the number of candidates to expect. At that point, I looked at the job analyses and went through and prepared what appeared to me to be the areas of emphasis for the exam. This was done for my edification for the oral board, so to make sure that our questions for the oral board were germane and appropriate for the sergeant's position. Bruce Davey had already had a wide range of experience with New Canaan and had a series of job analyses that he utilized for his written exam. So I was then on vacation during the middle of August, and then there was one final communication with Captain Walsh, making sure that the arrangements were all set, and the exam was administered on August the 27th. I was there with Bruce Davey, at least at the outset, not for the entire written exam, but at least at the outset. Our protocol is always to try and introduce ourselves to the candidates, so they will have a familiarity with me and have a familiarity with what our organization does leading up to the oral board, and to try and make all candidates as comfortable as possible. The written examination was then administered. Bruce Davey, Bruce BDA Associates then corrected them, forwarded the results to me, and I forwarded those results to New Canaan and began the arrangements for the oral board.
Thank you. Thank you. Bruce, if you could walk us through your part of this process.
Okay, I'd like to open by saying I've got more than 40 years experience in test development and test validation. Before I started my own business, I was the state's chief personnel psychologist for a period of 13 years, basically designing all of their test validation and test development procedures. I won a Manager of the Year award for that with the state. I've also won a couple of national awards for my work in testing. And in Connecticut, I've given more than 1,000 police tests over a 30-year period. My experience with New Canaan goes back 26 years. I've done 10 police sergeant tests over that time, and I believe 6 or 7 higher level promotions, typically lieutenant. So I've had a lot of experience in New Canaan. I've done job analyses over a long period of time. I've met with previous chiefs, Eric Dam, Christopher Lynch, and with Chief Krolakowski. And I did a lot of job analysis this last time around, which goes well beyond the job description. I agree that the job description is kind of sketchy, and as you say, it's not new. But I didn't use the job description as the basis of the test. I used my past experience, prior chiefs and their second in commands, assent of the test areas, the test weights. And so I had an awful lot of information going into the test. I issued the test outline and reading list to Dr. Sherwood well in advance of the test. I don't know what date it was actually announced, but it was well in advance of the test. 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I don't know the exact, somebody else in this group may know the exact time period. But that gave the candidates not only the test areas they would be covered on, but the tests, the books that they should be using. And those books included the Connecticut Law Enforcement Officers Field Manual, which is issued to all officers. They don't need to study it for that short period of time of 6 to 8 weeks. They've had that in their possession all along. Likewise, general orders, 15 in particular that were issued to me through Dr. Sherwood from Captain Lynch, and a few other books that are useful for preparing for the test. A supervisory text, a police field operations text, a community policing text. They had all that in advance. On the day of the test, I should comment that the first page of the test booklet does say, please choose the best answer for each question. I guess I have a new insight into why the scores might have been a little bit lower than expected. Whenever there's a new consultant who comes in, the old consultant has sort of become used to the candidates have become used to the previous consultant, and they might even pitch their studying to questions they remember or material they've seen. And when they get a new consultant, it's a little bit of a, I won't say a shock, it's different to them. So they weren't ready for my test because they were taking somebody else's tests the last few times before that. I will comment that all 5 of the candidates said on the test comment sheet that they felt the test was fair and job related. I'm not sure if everyone got or got to see the comment sheets, but there's a question that's asked at the beginning of it that says, do you feel that this test was generally fair and job related? Yes, no. And then they get a few lines where they can comment further if they wish. But again, all 5 at the time of the test, before they got their scores, said they thought the test was fair and job related. I think that's an important consideration here. The test was scored, very carefully scored, rechecked again. 5 candidates took the test, 3 candidates passed. There were 3 white candidates, 2 passed, 1 failed. There was 1 African-American candidate. He passed and finished second. And then there was 1 Hispanic candidate who did not pass. 1 of the white candidates did not pass. I don't see those results reflecting disparate impact. The sample is just too small to make that kind of a judgment. It's what's called in the field not statistically significant. Now, I'll take any questions you might have.
Just one more time on the time between when materials was given out and then the test. How long a period was that? Is that 6 or 8 weeks?
No, I think it was about 6 weeks, but I don't know exactly when the list was published. I know I submitted it in June.
Yeah, I can probably respond to that. The list was submitted to this office, and I sent it down to Captain Walsh as an attachment to the letter on June 30 of 2020. So if the test was given on August the 27th, that's what, 57 days, 8 days, something like that.
Right. Okay.
Was it 7 weeks?
7 weeks. Almost 8 weeks. Yes. Chris, any other questions that we are short of answering here for guidance?
I don't know if the commissioners have questions or if the union has any questions.
Anthony, do you have any questions? Anthony, you're muted. Do you have questions?
David, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do.
All right, dude.
Okay. So I appreciate Bruce's experience. I just want to reiterate that there were a bunch of general order violations, and the testing process wasn't consistent with our general orders. To speak to that, I have a question for Bruce. Bruce, you stated that you didn't use the New Canaan's job description at all. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. I said I didn't rely on it alone. I went to the website. I went to previous test outlines I've done.
Okay.
I got a lot of information from the general orders that I would call job analysis information. I looked at the annual report and the strategic plan, table of organization. All of that goes toward.
But you did state that the job description was sketchy.
Yeah, I think he did that.
He did, correct.
That it was vague.
Okay, very good. Mr. Davies,
it's Davey. No,
I'm sorry, Davey. I'm sorry.
No, I get that all the time.
Mr. Davey, do you recall during the actual test taking the answer sheet, the test, and the actual piece of paper that you described that contained the questions as to whether or not the test was fair or not, away from another officer who wanted to continue writing?
Not taking it away from him, just telling him, time is up, please hand in all your materials. I didn't take anything away from anyone.
Okay, very well. Let me go back. So essentially you told him that he could not continue writing on the pieces of paper that he currently had because the time was over.
And I had been announcing, you'll remember this, with about 30 minutes left, I started announcing periodically how much time remained. And when we got down to 5 minutes, I was saying, pencils down in 5 minutes, pencils down in 2 minutes. So it wasn't a sudden, hey, your time's up. It was something.
No, I would argue, and this is just my opinion taking your test, that there was no instructions in regards to that actual piece of paper that was given in regards to whether or not the test was fair or not. And the instructions were very little in regards to that paper. And I think that's why that officer was very confused, because he thought, after speaking to him, he thought that he would be able to have that piece of paper along with the test booklet to be able to go through it and write down questions or write down questions that he had issues with, and really go through the test booklet. So it's my opinion and the opinion of others that took the test that part of the testing process was rushed. And because it was rushed and because there wasn't enough time allotted for test takers to write down how they felt about the test, that maybe some answers on that test, on that piece of paper, could be skewed because they did not have enough time. That's just my opinion. Did you say that Captain Walsh directly sent you 15 general orders that he wanted in the test?
No. I said he sent them to me through Dr. Sherwood.
I see. So an officer, a captain from the New Canaan Police Department, selected 15 questions that he wanted to be in the test and sent those questions directly to the testing agency.
No, that's incorrect. He sent 15 general orders. That's about 100 pages of information. And he didn't specify any questions. He just said, these are the general orders that are most important for Sergeant.
I see. Now, was Captain Walsh part of the job analysis?
In the sense that he identified those general orders, you could say he was a part of the job analysis.
Okay, so if we talk about the job analysis for the commissioners is a variety of questions that are asked to specific sergeants and lieutenants, in this case, in the New Canaan Police Department. So these questions were asked directly to them about specific job-related tasks for the position of sergeant. So these individuals were selected to conduct the job analysis. When I looked through the job analysis, Captain Walsh never completed a job analysis for the position of sergeant.
I think you have a different definition of job analysis. You're referring to a job analysis questionnaire.
Okay.
Which is one tool that is sometimes used, but you can run a job analysis without ever doing job analysis questionnaires. I did quite a few job analysis questionnaires back in the early period when I was doing New Canaan's tests, and didn't see a necessity to do it again this time.
I see. Okay, so once again, Captain Walsh never completed a job analysis questionnaire.
No.
Okay. He simply,
I know he had some dealings with Dr. Sherwood, and I don't want to speak for Dr. Sherwood on that. But.
Very good, very good. Now, is it rare for the individuals that are actually completing the job analysis questionnaire to give input into general orders? Into specific general orders?
Do you mean identify general orders that would be useful for me to have? Yes,
Correct.
It is. It's very common.
Oh,
If all a department did was give me all of its general orders, it would be very easy for me to go astray, because there are a lot of general orders that have very little relevance for a sergeant position.
I guess
what I do is look at what general orders I've been submitted, and sometimes if a particular general order is missing, something I think is important, I'll ask about it.
I guess the question I'm asking is you went so far to do job analysis a job analysis questionnaire, and that job analysis questionnaire was given to multiple sergeants and multiple lieutenants in the town of New Canaan Police Department. Why only get general orders from one individual rather than asking every single individual that took the job analysis questionnaire for an idea of what general orders they thought were important to the position of sergeant in the town of New Canaan?
Let's call it part of testing art, that you find out who knows the job, who knows the general orders, and which ones are important for sergeant. If you open it up to everyone to give their opinions, you're involving the candidates in the development of their own test.
Well, isn't that part of isn't that part of why a questionnaire is used, so that you as a testing administrator has the opportunity to get an insight as to what a sergeant, an actual sergeant in the department and a lieutenant in the department thinks, what they actually think the position of sergeant should be?
Over 26 years, I collected that information by having interviews with many people in the New Canaan Police Department. I didn't do it with this last test because I had the information already. We do have a pandemic going on that makes it a little difficult to conduct interviews.
So you consider the test-taking process more of an art rather than a science?
You're putting words in my mouth that I didn't intend.
Okay, but you did say it was an art.
What I said after you gave all this information, your opinions on how a job analysis should be done, that there are certain points in it that, you know, maybe you can call an art, but don't put words in my mouth and say I'm calling test development an art.
You did. This is recorded. I just want to remind everyone.
I think you need to listen to the recording.
Okay.
Because you did put words in my mouth.
Okay.
Are there any other, are there any questions?
I think I'm good with questions.
Okay. And if
There is one other thing, I don't know if I can return to pointing out some of the validation that was done in New Canaan. Over my 26 years, there were, I believe, 6 cases where I not only had test scores on New Canaan candidates, but information on their job performance ratings. And when you summarize that information, the test shows a very strong relationship between test scores and job performance ratings. In the field, that's called criterion-related validity. That was well established for New Canaan as well.
good to hear, thank you.
And just one more thing, just to clarify, Captain Walsh was the liaison for our office for the testing. Go-to person for all of the testing related matters. And that's how the exchange of job analyses involved him. That's.
Okay, if we don't have any other information, would be the intent of the police commission to go into executive session to deliberate?
I think before we get to that, I just want to make a quick statement in regards to this.
Yeah, my apologies.
No, it's okay. In regards to this process, it's evident that there have been a couple of hiccups throughout the way as to how this test was created. Now, I would like to say that you know, there are particular laws set in place that the federal government has established to govern these types of tests for municipal agencies. And with that, it's the duty of the town to validate a test. It's the duty of the town of New Canaan, the New Canaan Police Department to validate the test. This is written law. It's great that Mr. Davy validated the test himself, but without an independent individual from the town looking at the test to make sure that the test is in fact valid and follows the job description and the job analysis for the position of sergeant, there is no way for the town to actually say that that process actually occurred. The town actually needs the test to be able to run that specific test. So I just wanted to say that one last thing. And commissioners, I thank you so much for your time in this matter. I appreciate all your hard work in this.
Thank you. All right, so maybe, Chair, that we could go into executive session to deliberate.
I have one follow-up question and yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, faintly.
Yeah, my follow-up question is that to Officer Rivera's last point, the town, if I'm understanding the testimony correctly, the town in effect outsourced some of those functions to the testing experts. And maybe both sides could just quickly address, is that normally done? Is it impermissible? Is it permissible? I mean, it appears to me that's what the way the town did this was to hire an expert to perform some of those functions that the town is required to perform. And is that wrong? Is that permissible? Is that impermissible? Maybe both sides could briefly give us an answer.
Well, we can address that.
So the Civil Rights Act.
Rivera, officer, if I could address what the law is, it's not my understanding of the law that the town has to hire an independent person to validate the test, that we do hire an expert to do that.
So, sir, in regards to the Civil Rights Acts of 1974, the Civil Rights Act clearly states that it's the duty of the town to ensure that any agency that the town uses, that the town is able to validate the test, the duty of the town. So under the law, under the Civil Rights Act of 1974, it clearly states that it's the duty of the town to make sure that the test that is being given is validated to ensure that it's a proper test.
I understand the town has ultimate responsibility for the test under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And we're aware of our responsibilities.
And in doing that, to put that trust in an independent agency with no one from the town being able to look and see and feel the test does not show that the town has actually conducted that validating process. To that point, I asked other cities and towns here in the state of Connecticut that run their own tests as to whether or not they would ever hire a private agency to conduct a test for them that would not allow them to see the test. And the answer was no. And the reason why it was no is because they can't validate the test themselves.
And I respectfully disagree. So thank you.
I'd like to comment that I've done testing for more than 50 towns in Connecticut, and they never want to see the test. They want to have a secure test.
Let's then go into executive session. Jennifer, if you would just keep us on, keep me with Chris, I think that'd be it, right?
You, Chris, Cheryl, and Leon.
And you're going to put us in another room?
You can leave and then click the link that I'm assuming Dave sent you, and I'll let you back in again. Just say leave meeting, and then
You can monitor it.
you can come back in and you'll be in the waiting room.
Right.
And when we're ready to go back into open session, I will re-admit you.
Okay.
If you have any issues, please call me. I can give you my number if you want.
Right, if you can't get back in, please just dial into Jennifer's number, all right?
203-594-3512. Just a second, Paul. I'm just putting people in the waiting room.
Thanks again, Charlie and Bruce.
Okay, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Can't hear.
We can't really hear you, Paul.
It looks like we have everybody back in the room. First of all, I'd like to say thank you all for participating tonight. We greatly appreciate all the input that we've gotten here and all our thoughts and efforts have gone into, in the executive session, come up with a conclusion here. With that, I would ask for a motion. But say it loudly.
Okay.
So here's our opinion.
Motion would be resolved that the New Canaan Police Commission denies the appeal by Officer Rivera regarding the sergeant's exam taken by him on August 27th, 2020, and that a written decision based upon the discussions held in executive session will be issued shortly.
All right, that's the motion. A second?
Aye.
Aye. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Again, thank you all, David, Anthony, Charles, Bruce, Chris, Cheryl, Chief, and especially Jennifer for putting all this together. All right, that concludes our meeting tonight. Motion to
Thank you.
adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.